Hi there, thank you for joining us. My name is Julie McKean and I head up the media practice in London for Odgers Berndtson Executive Search. This is another in my series of my one question for 2021. As we all know, 2020 has had its challenges and sometimes its opportunities. And we just thought at the end of the year, it's time to be looking forward and having reasons to be cheerful with some of the leading lights across the media landscape in London. So, quick conversation today is with Timo Armoo, who is the founder of Fanbytes. I'm going to introduce him properly in a minute. Hi, Timo. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, hello. Happy to be here.
Timo, as I say, is the founder and chief executive of Fanbytes. Now, Fanbytes is helps the world's biggest brands to reach younger audiences on social media. Having been a former maths tutor, that's probably come in handy in growing the business to already 50 people. And 2021 is looking pretty bright for him and for the team. So I'm going to throw out the question now to Timo. What are you excited about or optimistic about for 2021 in your industry?
What I am optimistic about. So I think that the pandemic and COVID has made very clear that the thing that is of most value is the audience that you have. So, for example, in Q2, we saw brand spending go down, but audiences skyrocket. And I think that going ahead, we are going to see a lot more of this idea of people who own audiences and actually building their own brands and building their own form of IP, and then maybe partnering up with other people commercially to amplify that, rather than the way that we've done it so far, which is very much like you have an audience and pretty much the only way you can think about monetizing is through brand partnerships. So people actually taking their audience and building big brands of it. I've always said actually that I think the next significant billionaire, I think, would be an influencer, someone who's actually built his audience, his or her audience, and use the IP to grow that. So that for me is something I'm very, very excited about, almost like influencers becoming brands and owning IP in of themselves.
That's very interesting. And do you think, because obviously 2020 for some of the smaller influencers has been quite a tricky place to navigate.
Yeah.
Have you seen that there might be a sort of a shift in the way that the big global brands that you work with at Fanbytes might be working with some of those influencers in 2021? Is there more of an understanding of the dynamics around it than there might have been a couple of years ago?
Yeah, so I think increasingly what we're seeing is the influencer being seen as almost distribution, but also like a walking, talking creative agency, an idea machine. So you suddenly have that all being appreciated by the influencer. So in the past, it was very much, you've got an audience, we're going to distribute that. Mm-hmm. Now, because we can't go out and take and can't shoot films, or we can't go out and shoot these feature length ads, etc. They're actually going, tell you what, you in your house, in your flat, what's the idea, film it, shoot it. We're not only going to get you to post it on your audience, but we're also going to get you, or what we're going to do is also going to buy the creative from you and use it for our TV spot, and use it for our radio spot, and use it for our podcast spot, and use it for our billboard. So suddenly the influencer, who was pretty much almost just a media distribution channel, is now actually being seen as this all-encompassing source of audience, content, and insights as well.
That's very interesting. So much more holistic approach to how brands are going to use influencers. Now, I couldn't possibly let this opportunity go past without asking you to explain to people the very clever way in which you went about lockdown 1.0, as we're now going to call it, with your house. Tell us what you did and why.
The infamous Byte House. Yeah. So we started the Byte House. So what it is we got 6 of the biggest TikTokers in one house to create content. And so far it's been incredible. Primarily because the influencers in there are people who really typify the Gen Z culture. So in all, we're now on, well, Lord knows, over 100 million views on our content. But the key thing about it is, like, in there you have LGBT people, you have Black people, you have white people, like you have such an eclectic range that they've actually been taking on a brand of their own off TikTok. So they're building like makeup lines and fashion
Wow.
lines and books and TV shows. And that's just been in like the last 10 months or so. And so that has been quite a whirlwind to almost go, yes, lockdown is happening, everyone stay at home. So therefore we go, cool, everyone stays at home, but actually these six TikTokers are going to stay at home together, and they're going to create content out of it, and it worked exceptionally well.
Did you find that there was a sort of, I suppose influencers have always shown a little glimpse of their personal life, and that's been kind of quite a valuable part of their brands. But when they're all in that house together, did you find that there was an interesting creative cross-fertilization that happened between them?
Yeah, so we saw, I think on average, each person grew like 40-50% just from the cross pollination, but actually it was more about the idea. So for example, one of them is quite good at makeup, but the other is quite good at dancing, or one of them is quite good at pranks and comedy. So what happens when you bring a makeup, comedy, dancer, together to create content? It's a pretty interesting mix there. So that's what we saw. And it's been continuing. And I think the key thing is just they started off as a brand on TikTok, and now they've just evolved to something much bigger. But it's not even because of the followers on TikTok. It's almost because they are very what's the word I'm looking for? Like, they self-identify as who Gen Z are. Like,
Right.
There are two people in there, Seb and Monty, who are a gay couple. One is 18, one is 21, and they talk about life as a gay couple in there. And it's just such a really eclectic group of people that it works for that audience.
And do you find that going into 2021, there's going to be a real opportunity to perhaps bring these bigger brands, who most of whom are in charge of those marketing budgets aren't Gen Z, along with you in quite an educative process to the difference between that generation and perhaps, in my case, Gen X, let alone millennials?
Yeah, so in October, we were fortunate enough to basically guest edit the Drum magazine, which was pretty insane. When that opportunity came around, I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like, the whole thing was written by us, edited by us, and it was sent to brands and publications. So that was a big, that was big in being able to fill that gap in which, the Gen Xer who reads the Drum but doesn't understand TikTok suddenly has a whole guest issue with them talking about it and then telling about it.
Like a user's guide to TikTok and influencers.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Great.
So that's terrific. And so touching on that just briefly before we wrap up, it does strike me, therefore, that there are some implications for talent, for brands, perhaps at the brand side, that you might wish to impart to the people who are hiring senior brand talent for 2021, or any tips and suggestions you might have for what they need to be looking out for.
As in, for people who are hiring.
For example, if you're a big FMCG brand and you're looking at your next, what your kind of marketing team looks like, I'm guessing that sort of, things like a real propensity to want to learn and curiosity are going to be even more important. But it also sounds like you're kind of connecting the dots in an interesting way across the media landscape, around the influencer in a way that nobody was before.
Yeah. So I'd say, often when we think about the term influencer, we think about it from a B2C perspective. But I think increasingly, especially with platforms like LinkedIn, right, what you start to see is almost that even employees themselves are becoming influencers in their own way. So if I'm thinking about hiring for 2021, and I'm thinking, well, because everyone is, primarily going to be at home, everyone's going to be online, suddenly the barrier to actually almost documenting your own life, or if you're an employee, being able to show different parts of your life is lower than ever, which therefore means if I'm trying to hire someone, actually part of the criteria that I'm thinking about is, do they have a social mindset? Like, do they have a way in which, yes, I may hire this person, but in hiring this person, my work or whatever I do gets amplified even more just by them posting on LinkedIn, just by them posting on Instagram. I think that's a key criteria that if I was hiring, whether on the brand side or on a agency side or on any side, I think that's something which, because of COVID, because people have moved online, because the world has moved online, and that's almost that's the stage right now. I'd be looking for that as a key thing.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Timo. That's really, really clear. Well, it sounds like you've got your work cut out for you for a lot of growth in 2021.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Next, you'll be taking over all of the major national publications. So we look forward.
There you go. Exactly.
Thanks very much for joining us for our Just Person One Question, and speak to you soon, Timo.
Speak to you soon. Thank you.